So here's a question for you. Is that thing you do outside of your 9 to 5 really a side hustle, or is it just a hobby?
You're listening to Idea Charger Radio. Hey there, friends, and welcome back. It's episode 43. You're here with Scott on the Success Charger podcast. I'm certainly glad you're back one more time to hear what we're talking about. And today, I got to tell you, we're hopping back on the millennial train. And listen, it's not a bad thing, but there was an article that came out this week that's been circulating around on Facebook, and it's created some buzz. And I just can't sit here and not say anything anymore. All right. Now, the headline reads, "Millennials are obsessed with side hustles because they're all we've got." And it goes on to talk about how everybody seems to have some sort of a something going on outside of their regular, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, traditional job, however you describe that. And there's some debate that's sprung up in some of the circles, and folks that I know that have posted it, and various colleagues and such have added their 2 cents worth. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's millennials that are obsessed with side hustles. I think it's everybody. Now, let me qualify that in a couple of ways. Number one, I really hate the term side hustle. I'm tired of everybody going, "I'm grinding. That's what I'm doing." Okay, we used to call that working hard. Okay, I have a job. I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm taking care of business. But it makes us feel better and our egos sound better if we can call it a side hustle. It used to be called moonlighting. It's a second job. It's something else. What it is, folks, is an economic reality. For so many people, just trying to maintain the standard of living of which you grew up in middle-class America is getting more and more challenging to do. Now, this surprised me as well. The Wall Street Journal just last week had an article out that updated some statistics in the article about what percentage of people that are working today are in what class, I guess, even though the U.S. doesn't technically have classes. But they had a middle class, and then they had upper middle class, which surprisingly was people that made $100,000 to $350,000 of income, which I'm just going to say it, $100,000 is not what it used to be. Okay? Now, it's a lot of money, and I'd rather have a $100,000 job than not. I'd rather have $100,000 in business than not. But I will tell you, $100,000 just simply doesn't go as far as it used to. And that's just the reality. And if you just think about, what's considered technically middle class, let's look at some of the expenses you've got today that you didn't have, 20 or 30 years ago. It wasn't $40 for internet on top of a $200 cell phone bill because you've got to have oodles and gobs of data, because if you can't do anything on your smartphone, why have one? And then you've got, 400 bazillion channels of nothing on your cable or satellite dish. Now, to the cord cutters out there, congratulations to you if you figured it out. It is getting easier. I actually tried experimentally to do that a couple of years ago, and I found it increasingly frustrating that you just can't find live sports. And I couldn't seem to find enough of the programming, that when I really wanted to watch something, that was live. You just couldn't find it. Everything was recorded, which is fine to an extent, but once in a while, you just kind of want to see what's on TV, and not be committed to binge watching the latest season of some show. There's plenty of Netflix-centric shows or HBO series that get posted that I like, but my goodness, I can't sit at home every night and watch 5 episodes of Orange is the New Black. Besides, it doesn't take that long. You blow through a whole season of that, or House of Cards, or something else. Once in a while, I do want, something that makes me think, something that gives me some news. And that was it was incredibly hard to find. It was very fragmented and frustrating. But, you look at the cost of daycare. I've got a 4-year-old that goes to daycare. It's relatively inexpensive for her. And by that, I mean, thank goodness she's now 4. It's only $165 a week for somebody to watch my kid so that my wife and I can both go to work. Right? And that's a lot of money. Go ask your parents how much they paid for their first house. I promise you, it was less than probably your first car. So, the cost of living, despite what everybody seems to be telling us these days, it's gotten really expensive. But let's look at this from another way. I think our tastes have grown too. I mean, if you look at all the bells and whistles that come on vehicles these days and all kinds of stuff that is involved with buying a car, you don't get crank down windows anymore. You don't get a standard transmission anymore. You don't get a lot of those features that were technically less expensive. And you could argue that maybe they weren't as safe sometimes, but the reality is we've come to expect more in everything, more luxury. Hell, we pay $5 for a cup of coffee these days. And ask my grandparents if they ever thought they would pay $5 for a cup of coffee. They'd tell you were crazy. They don't like paying $5 for a pound of coffee. But I digress. Let's get back to the article, because this is the thing that really frustrated me. I got to thinking about this, and there were two sort of parallel conversations that unfolded as I started looking at this scenario. And so the article goes on. It talks about what's the income that you need and what do you need to do, and how do you really make this all play out so that you can make things work. And here's kind of where I seem to have settled. I really wanted to think about this in the context that my friend Darren LaCroix, he's a past guest, a friend of the show. He's a 2001 world champ at public speaking. Great guy. And he challenged me early on in my career to say, look, if you're trying to go out on your own, you're trying to make your own business, whether you're blazing your own trail as a programmer, as a speaker, as an author, whatever it is that you're going after to do. He said, don't let your safety net become your drag net. And what he meant was, don't get trapped, right? I mean, we get caught up sometimes in the, look, I won't lie. It's nice to get a check every 2 weeks. It's nice to, healthcare in the U.S. has become the burden of the employer. Now, you've probably heard me talk about that on the show before. And to be honest, it's technically maybe easier to find healthcare coverage in the U.S., but it still can be prohibitively expensive for a number of people. So we cling to a full-time job that offers that as a benefit because it just makes it somewhat more affordable to us, as citizens of the world who really ought to be able to access healthcare. There's other benefits like saving for retirement. You can do a lot if your company offers you a match, and so there's nice things and perks that go with that, and a variety of good reasons why. Let's be honest. If you're if you have a spouse, if you have actual children, I'm not talking about the four-legged furry ones. I'm talking about kids with 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 1 nose, beautiful, smart, adorable, amazing child like you have or more. Look, sometimes that entrepreneurial dream is just that. It's just going to be a dream until you really take the plunge. So lately I've challenged myself to start getting additional perspectives, and I've started listening to some other podcasts and reading some emails that come out every week from people that play in the startup community, and they talk about some of the classic moves. People spend a lot of time and money creating some really awesome app or a product that has all these bells and whistles that nobody wants to pay for. All right. And so that, I think, begins to cloud in with, well, what do you do? Everybody wants to feel like they're doing something cooler than the job they actually have. And that creates a challenge for traditional employers because in their mind, they've bought all of your available time. All right. Now, if you want to hear what I'm talking about there with buying your available time, I would encourage you to go back and find it's a classic text. It's by Dan Pink. It's one of his first books called Free Agent Nation. That's a book that changed my life. And to be honest, I picked it up at a time where I was going through some transition. Somebody recommended it to me. I found it used online for 50 cents, paid $2 for shipping. It was worth many, many times over what I paid for it. So whatever you find it for, check it out at the library, borrow it from a friend, see if anybody's got it collecting dust on their nightstand. Get your hands on that book and read it, because what it talks about is that the mindset is changing in America. And in a way, it kind of is. You see, employers in a perfect world are increasingly looking at tighter and tighter and tighter margins, particularly today. We're in a down cycle of the economy in a lot of the industries I work with. even those traditionally thought of as being very wealthy industries, right? So we're seeing a little dip in the financial industry. We're seeing a dip in the oil and gas industry and many of the other industries that feed into those. I spend a lot of time, training and development. That's what I do. A lot of my clients have tighter budgets than they had a couple of years ago. And, that's just the trickle down effect of what happens. So we're mindful about how we spend our money. And if you look at it, a lot of traditional employers these days are saying, look, we would love to be able to just buy the brains and capacity of the smartest people that we need just when we need them. And then if we didn't have to carry them as overhead in those downtimes, that'd be awesome. Well, okay, let's look at the practical nature of that. Because several years ago, I worked specifically with a small business owner who wanted to do just that. He had a special project that he had. He hired me to do it. We clearly outlined what it was in a contract. And at the end of the day, it drove him bananas that he couldn't control my time. He wanted to control me. He wanted to think of me as an employee. And I was an independent contractor. I was given very clear, specific goals and was also had the freedom to build that around the business I was doing for other clients. I distinctly remember one day he called me and said, hey, where are you today? Can you come in for a meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock? And I said, that would be impossible. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. And he said, what in the world are you doing in San Antonio? I said, I'm doing work for another client today. He said, you're supposed to be working for me. And I said, actually, I have a report due to you on Friday. And the goal was that I would have called X number of your clients and made contact with them and have an update for you. I'm already 80% done with that by Tuesday afternoon. You'll have the report on Friday as agreed. And it drove him nuts, ultimately to the point that we canceled the contract. And therein lies the problem. There are some smart people out there, and millennials are you're a big bunch of them, just in sheer number. You think about the world differently. You don't mind working on projects. Your sense of team depends on, you may have 10 different teams you're working on through the course of a day. I talk to groups about that all the time when I'm talking to people who are individual contributors in their companies that say, I don't really have a team. And I said, what do you mean you don't have a team? Of course you have a team. Everybody you come in contact with is potentially a different team. You have a team with your vendors, with your suppliers, with your business partners, with your clients, with your people that refer business to you, your people in your network, your mastermind group, everybody that you come in contact with is a de facto team. Well, the challenge with the traditional workforce, or traditional employers, I guess, is they want to be able to control the time of so many people. Now, sometimes they get it. Executives understand it. They'll put a very expensive consultant, often on retainer. They'll put an attorney, constantly get people on retainer, so that, hey, you're on standby. If I call you, I get priority. I get to jump to the front of the line. You're like my pre-check for business, right? Pre-check being the service that lets you expedite through the security checkpoints at most airports, at least in the U.S. And, the whole idea with that is that it allows you to build relationships with a number of clients who pay you to be on standby. And when they need you, maybe they pay some additional fee, or you're just simply available to them. If you subscribe to the Alan Weiss school, he says, you shouldn't put anybody on retainer for less than, he used to say 100,000. I would imagine that number maybe has come up a little. But at the end of the day, put it at a number that works for you, right? I've had clients that have kept me on retainer for much less than 100,000 for a short period of time, but they needed me to be available when they had something that came up where my expertise was needed. And that's fine. And they understood I had other clients, and they understood that it might not be that I could physically be at their location on a day they wanted me there, but with enough notice, and we can agree to that, it all works. But it takes work. It takes work to make that work, right? And I'm finding that a lot of traditional employers, that's too complicated. And really, it should be thought of as simple. So why do I go through all that? Well, think about it from that independent standpoint. You've got an idea. You're really good at something. Maybe it's writing code. Maybe it's giving people advice. Perhaps you're a fantastic athletic trainer. You're a brilliant engineer. And you just want to work on the projects that you want to work on. Things that baby boomers are doing now in the later years of their career because they already have enough cash that if nobody calls, it's not a big deal. But for those that are on the front end of their career that say, you know what, I want to blend the lifestyle that I want to live with the career that I have, right? Because there is no such thing as work-life balance anymore. We're all in a blender trying to make a smoothie that tastes good, right? So let's figure out what the ingredients would be. So what happens is so many creative, out-of-the-box thinkers would rather be doing just the work they want to, are forced to have to think of that as an after-hours gig, as a quote-unquote side hustle, something they do in their own time. For some of them, they may stumble eventually into a project that is sizable enough that they can then step away from their traditional job. And if that happens for you, awesome. But I'm willing to bet that's the exception, which is why the coffee shops are jammed with people with laptops who don't have real jobs, or maybe they do have a quote-unquote real job, and people just don't get it. They don't understand it. It's taken years, so even for my own family, to understand sometimes what I do. I've been working in the leadership development space for nearly a decade now, as a speaker, as a trainer, facilitator, and doing all the work that I do for a variety of people. Often I do a lot of contract work. That's an industry that gets it. I have an agreed upon rate with a couple of my bigger clients, and if they call and ask for my availability, I know what they're going to pay me per day. And just on the sheer volume of the work they send me, it makes sense for me. It absolutely does. For other clients, it's a one-off. Can you come in and do something for me on a project basis? They pay more, but they don't have access to me all of the time. So it becomes a proposition about what is your time worth, not in hours, but in value. And that's the proposition. That's the place that's missing. And so it brings me to the second part of this question. You see, you've got all these people that really want to be doing something else, but they're sort of trapped into a job that provides them a certain level of quote-unquote comfort, or satisfies certainly some needs that they have, maybe for their families, to keep food on the table, keep the mortgage paid, the rent paid, the house, car payments, daycare, diapers, whatever it is you're paying for, or maybe just a really good bottle, once a month of your favorite libation, right? If you don't have some of those other responsibilities, good for you, right? But what I want you to think about is this. If you are working really hard on a project that nobody wants to buy, I once wrote a book that nobody bought because I didn't understand that it was really a business. If you write a book, that's great. If you can sell a book, that's amazing. It's a lot easier to do the former than the latter. I didn't have a good business plan for that book project I did about 10 years ago. And I think total, maybe we sold 100 copies of the book. And I promise you, I sold 98 of those. And it wasn't easy. And I'm pretty sure I gave about half of those away. So I say this. What's wrong with having a hobby? There was a time that's what people did. Sometimes when we think of hobbies, we think about remote control cars and we think about flying kites or racing motorcycles or cars or whatever it is you like to go do when you have fun. But what in the world's wrong with that? Why are we so obsessed with having to monetize everything? Can't we just go enjoy and be in the moment? I mean, the other day I saw an article about certain musical artists that are beginning, music and other performing artists, they're actually banning cell phones. You have to take your phone, put it in a zippered, locked bag, and leave it outside of the arena when you go in to watch the event. And I got to tell you, I would love to go to a concert where everybody in front of me wasn't trying to record some shaky video they will never update or upload to YouTube and will certainly never ever watch again. If you want a hobby, have a hobby. Find something you love to do and just go do it for the sake of enjoying it. That's why you work. If you have a side hustle because you're trying to see if a business can get some traction, give yourself a time limit. Do it for a little bit. Set some minor goals for you. If it doesn't start making money for you in some reasonable amount of time and it becomes work and you don't enjoy it anymore, it's okay to stop. You don't have to have a side gig. Just go to work, do your job, and keep that entrepreneurial mindset that allows you to find success where other people see doors closing in front of them. That's what I got for you this week, Success Chargers. We'll be back again next time. Thanks for stopping by. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend today, would you? Really appreciate that. Thanks.
If you enjoyed what you just heard, please post your 5-star review and subscribe to Success Charger today. Your future